So excited to be here today, and so glad that you're all able to join us. My name's Kelsey Gerber. I'm the Associate Director here at Service Year Alliance. We're excited to have you at our Alumni Engagement session. So before we get started, I wanted to provide a little bit of guidance around how to use the hop-in features during the breakout sessions, and this will be relevant for the next breakout session you go to as well. So if you have a question for panelists, you can type it into the Q&A tab on the top right of your screen. You can also feel free to like others' questions as well, or upvote them, I guess, if you're a Reddit fan. And we will prioritize answering questions if they have additional likes as well, so that we can make sure we're answering questions that feel the most relevant to the most people. You can also use the chat feature. Feel free to tell us how you or others working in this space are engaging with alums, or share other helpful resources that attendees might find valuable. So with that, looks like Nikki might have dropped off. Okay. We will assume that Nikki will make it back on with that. So Julie and Christy, we will start with you guys, and hopefully Nikki will be joining us again. So I'll invite you guys to tell us a little bit about who you are and why you think alumni engagement is valuable in your community. So we will start with Julie. Hey, Nikki, glad you made it back.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Lorenzo. I'm the Service Year Expansion Manager in the Mayor's Office of Civic Engagement and Volunteer Service here in the city of Philadelphia. So I support our office's initiative to expand service year programs with a focus in reducing barriers and building more equitable service year programs in Philly. And also, big part of my role is also engaging our alumni chapter and serving as an advisor for them and as a liaison between them and our mayor's office. So for me in this work, I work in several coalition spaces that promote and raise awareness and care for the service year programs in Philadelphia. So we work with many partners and stakeholders, which is great, but I personally feel that alumni are just one of the best advocates for our service year programs, not only because they attended the program and know everything about them, but because they also carry on the core values of being in a service year program into their next roles and their positions after service. And they're just really great at talking about service year programs, why they're so amazing. And, they step into a lot of civic leadership position after service and are still very civically engaged. And I think that's such added value that they bring into whatever space they end up going to, but also just to the city of Philadelphia in general, that we're retaining these folks that are civically engaged and care about the city after. So that's why I think it's important to invest in alumni. And, I feel like we are definitely missing out in their voice and power if we're not, building and investing in them as future leaders in our city.
That's so energizing and exciting. I love hearing about the potential you see in alums. Christy, do you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about why alumni engagement is so important in New York City?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Christy Venable. I'm the NYC National Service Support Director at NYC Service, which is a division of the Office of the Mayor in New York City. In my role, I lead the Service Year Impact Community here in New York City. And as part of that, I convene and provide services and resources to about 40 different service year programs that operate in New York City. As well as providing a range of services and resources for over 2,000 service year members here in New York, and thousands of alumni that are here in the city. So with regards to alumni engagement, myself and I think, speaking on behalf of the Mayor's Office and NYC Service, we think it's important to engage service year alumni because we see them as the next generation of civic leaders here in the city. For some, we hope they'll maybe pursue careers in public service or the nonprofit sector. Others, it may be joining a community board, volunteering their time in some other capacity, but we do see them as being really the next generation of civic leaders. In terms of, the resources we feel we can bring to alums, though, we recognize that a lot of them are still seeking those connections to the service year community, whether serving as mentors to current members, which we do, as well as providing them with professional development opportunities to help with their own growth.
Awesome. And Nikki, do you want to talk a little bit about who you are and how you have worked with alumni engagement in your community?
Sure, because two favorite topics, right? Myself and alumni engagement. So I'm Nikki Fiacco, and I'm the director of the Governor's Office on Service and Volunteerism. We're the Maryland State Service Commission, and we monitor about 19 AmeriCorps programs throughout the state, and we have about 900 AmeriCorps members throughout the state. And we also highlight and recognize and promote volunteerism for nonprofits and other organizations throughout Maryland. I'm also an AmeriCorps alumni, so my service journey was windy and weird, and I didn't know that there was actually like a volunteer and national service industry. But I just really think that nothing is more powerful than a shared experience. It builds kinship, it builds loyalty and connection. And I always think of the business model that your best customer are the returning customers, right? Like Nike isn't trying to focus on selling 100% shoes to new customers. Their best customers are the ones who go back and get the Nikes again and again and again. That's why people stand in line overnight to get the new iPhone, because they're dedicated and they feel part of this movement. And it seems weird to compare service experience with consumerism, but I actually think in this way it helps us to stay really clear of how important it is to really have a strategic plan when you are engaging AmeriCorps alum. It's not something to just do sidebar. It should really be thought out and processed. And alumni engagement and collaboration in alumni engagement is essential. It's essentially working smarter and not harder. And if we're looking to grow, a more diverse, inclusive community, then what can be better than reconnecting and engaging with AmeriCorps alumni or service year alumni who've spent a service year or two, engulfed in addressing the community's most pressing needs with compassion and effectiveness. So that's my thought.
That's awesome. And I love the metaphor. I love all metaphors a lot. I've heard another colleague talk about that sort of like volunteerism and civic engagement and service as a muscle, and that's a muscle you have to keep building. So you start really developing that muscle during your service year, and then engaging as an alum, you can kind of keep building upon that muscle and continue to grow and develop it and strengthen it and tone it. Great.
Everybody wants a toned volunteer muscle, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So I want to dig in and talk a little bit about, this is something that I'm sure everyone's thinking about watching right now. What are some of the challenges or barriers around pursuing some of this work in your community, and a little bit about how you are thinking about overcoming them? And maybe we can start with you, Nikki, since you're off mute.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to speak to just kind of the AmeriCorps experience. In some ways, it's not accessible to everyone because of the low living stipend, and just the fact that there's a real big sacrifice that happens when somebody serves as an AmeriCorps member. And, we're just rethinking the idea of what it means to be a service member and how we can use some of this extra funding that's come through the federal government to help bolster our programs. And we also want to get, we want everybody to be at the table. We can't plan a service year or plan a service year experience without all the voices present. And that's even the people who might not be participating in the program that want to, those individuals who are being served. Having everybody's voice at the table, I think, is going to be important to move us down the track to have this as a more accessible, inclusive experience for anyone in the United States that wants to, serve as a year. And we also have to start thinking about how we disperse our funding, the AmeriCorps funding or the support for other organizations. What does that look like? Because right now it's very challenging for organizations to become a program that supports service members. So, as the commission, we are all working, our commissioners are all working together. We have a committee on diversity and equity inclusion, and we're really tackling this head on every day. Not concrete stuff, but we are moving in that direction.
Yeah, that's great. Christy, do you have any thoughts on challenges or barriers you guys have experienced in New York City around alumni engagement and how you've overcome them?
Yeah, I think two that immediately come to mind. We started working with the New York City AmeriCorps Alums Chapter probably about 3 years ago. It operates independent of my office, but we are a very active and engaged partner with the chapter. I think something we observed early on was that I think for a chapter to be successful, or at least the way we and this chapter wanted to be successful, there's really a need for some sort of backbone support for the alums chapter. Someone who can maybe serve as a physical sponsor, because it's all really volunteer run. And so, when we met our chapter leader, he was like, I've got an envelope in my desk drawer with like $55 from our last event, and I mean, so I think when we were able to step in and kind of be more of that backbone, help them with like some fundraising, help to secure space for different events they wanted to do, help to secure speakers and stuff like that for different things, presentations and professional development sessions they wanted to do for the members. The other thing too, I think, has been finding, a cohort of dedicated leaders for the chapter. Again, it's all volunteer. And, most of the individuals who are engaged, are full-time professionals. And so this is something they just do on the side. And so, it's been hard to find, that consistent leadership who can dedicate, potentially a couple hours a week, or at least, a couple hours a month to this work. What we've done to try to address that is, really working with kind of a core group who's been involved with this chapter to think through maybe some different position descriptions and roles that make most sense for this chapter and what it wants to achieve. So we're slowly getting there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. I think that, well, I don't know what's happening. Yeah, that trying to find alums who will maintain during their term, and then make sure that they're handing things off in a way that makes sense to the next group of leaders who take over for them after their term ends, is always a bit of a challenge, and thinking through how to do that successfully so that you continue to build upon that work and not have to start from scratch every time is a really important factor. Giroli, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges you guys have seen in Philadelphia and maybe how you're overcoming them, or maybe some you haven't overcome?
Yeah, a lot of my response to this question is very similar to what Christy just shared. I think it takes a lot of time and capacity to engage a large alumni network like the one that exists in Philadelphia. We have a short goal, like a small goal of bringing together 50 alumni to come to one of our events. We're still trying to meet that goal, but we're working hard to amp up our programming to reach that goal. We've done a lot of surveying of our alumni to see what they're looking for in the chapter and figure out, what type of events they're looking for or professional development to get them to come to our events. I will also say that it's helpful that I am the service year expansion manager and can offer a lot of support. And like I said, I serve as an advisor, but I also, yes, secure like the Zoom and the space and make sure they have the tools that they need to plan events and to get speakers and do what they want to do. I know that most impact communities don't have this person, or most programs and don't have that alumni engagement person, but it really does require somebody that gets paid to do some of that work and do that support and advising for alumni. So I think that's a barrier, and it's helpful that we also convene our programs in Philadelphia. So we have our program council. So we're able to work together in making sure that their alumni are transitioning into our chapter, so that we're growing every year. So that's been really great. And just having that communication, being able to share the events that are happening, you know, for each of the programs with the alumni chapter and vice versa, and sort of just tag teaming in terms of professional development even. So that's helpful. I think, as Christy shared, having a fiscal sponsor is super important and something that we haven't solved yet. Right now, our chapter, they really are itching to fundraise right now, and it keeps coming up in all of our meetings. But we don't have the structure to be able to hold money in our mayor's office for the chapter. So we're really just trying to find fiscal sponsors that we're able to support in that way. So I think that's one of the biggest challenge, is having the funding and being able to access funding for the chapter to do what they want to do.
Yeah, that's super insightful. And that's, I think, and I didn't mention at the top, but I am the liaison at Service Year Alliance for the Alumni Chapter Steering Committee. So we're really trying to think through how to connect chapters on a national level through the steering committee, as well as think through and try to understand what chapters need and what they what's important for them to excel. So that's something we're always hearing, is how to either get a fiscal sponsor. I know there's, I've heard of one chapter who's applying for nonprofit status themselves. And we're also thinking through the process of what it looks like to offer stipends to chapters from Service Year Alliance as well. So that's definitely an issue we've heard loud and clear, is a challenge for chapters that we're trying to think through how to address effectively. And I think impact communities might have a lot of potential in being a strong support network in that way in the long term too. So there's a lot of exciting potential there. So Jeroli and Christy, since I know you both talked about the chapters in your communities, and you both have impact communities that you are a part of, can you, and I think you've both touched on this a little bit, but do you have any other thoughts on how your impact community engages with the chapter? Yeah, and Jeroli, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, so in Philadelphia, we established what we call the National Service Landscape. We convene programs, and that's the program council. We convene cross-sector leaders that really care about national service and sort of set the strategies and are advocates for expanding service years in Philly, and that's the steering committee. And so we see the chapter as that third branch within that landscape. They are also supporting our goals of promoting programs and being advocates for these programs. And so as alumni, we think that they are important in advancing those strategic goals of that has been set out for the National Service Task Force as a collective. So they're strong advocates for us. And right now, we really want to make sure that they have a voice in the program council space and in the steering committee space, and are really at the forefront of promoting just service expansion in Philadelphia. So we're really excited to see what comes out of really building out our structure in this way, and making sure that everybody is communicating with one another and everybody is just aware of what those goals are as a collective, and moving our work forward in terms of service expansion and reducing barriers to service. And these are all things that are written out in their mission as a chapter as well. So we're really being very intentional in the way that we're all just have those collective shared goals moving forward.
Yeah, and I think it's so cool the way you guys are really engaging your chapter at such a critical level, because it really, I think, demonstrates the value you guys see as an impact community in the chapter. And I think I'm sure alums also can see that you guys value them as a result. So I think that's super cool. Christy, any thoughts on how your impact community engages with the chapter?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different, I would say, buckets for how we engage with the chapter. One is with just National Days of Service. We've pre-COVID, we would do kind of a citywide celebration of National Service Recognition Day, where we would bring members, program staff, and alums together for some sort of an event. We also have done that over the years with MLK Day of Service, and fingers crossed we'll be back to doing it in person next month for 9/11 Day of Service. So that's a time where members and alums can mix and mingle while doing service. We also, and this was coming directly from the alumni themselves, saying as a request, we've done a lot of speed networking events where members can connect with alums, and then we also seek out our alums to help with recruitment. When either NYC service and the AmeriCorps programs we run, or just the larger service year community here in New York, we'll connect with the chapter about current service opportunities that maybe they could recommend to their network. And then kind of some other ways we support alums directly. We do a lot of professional development with the alums. Last year we held a Nonprofit Boards 101 session for alumni who may be interested in joining a nonprofit board. We also did something similar for community boards, which we have here in the city. We host an annual conference and career fair for both alums and members. And so that's always had some good attendance by alumni. And just the last thing I'll share too is here in New York City, we have a Department of Veteran Services. And so we've actually partnered with them for the past 2 years on a program that we call Service to Service, where we take a cohort of AmeriCorps alums and a cohort of military veterans and match them with an employee in city government to serve as a mentor. And these are for individuals who have an interest in pursuing employment in city government. So yeah, there's some examples of how we've been working with alumni.
That's a lot of really cool examples. I had not heard about the vet and service year alum matching. That's a really cool idea. I think we're always at Service Year Alliance thinking about how to do a better job of connecting the national service community and the military community, because I think there's a lot of shared values there, and that's a really cool example to lift up and think through. So Nikki, I know your role in the commission looks a little bit different, but what do you think the role is for state service commissions in engaging alums, and what value do you think it has for national service at the state level?
Yeah, and Christy, I was actually taking notes as you were talking. I was like, oh, that's a great idea. That's something we can do. I love the idea of helping AmeriCorps alums, or I keep saying AmeriCorps alums, sorry, service year alumni get linked to volunteer opportunities like joining a board. That's a great idea. So before I answer your question, Kelsey, I just want a disclaimer that this is just my opinion. So I don't represent the field of state service commissions on this perspective. In fact, I think I'm kind of idealistic with my ideas, but that's just the gear that I run in all the time. But for Maryland, I want our commission to support programs in their alumni engagement by continuing to connect the programs with one another and provide opportunities. And we're doing that right now by reaching a little bit deeper than we usually do and really creating a cohort of alumni right from the get-go, from their at the beginning of their service year. And what we've done is we've morphed our one-day Life After AmeriCorps experience into a 3-time get together over the entire service year. And it's really the idea of when the service year starts in the fall, getting as many AmeriCorps members as we can together and having them know that there's other AmeriCorps members that are serving throughout the state doing similar or different things. And how does this link into alumni engagement? Once they start to develop these relationships throughout the service year and the connection with GOSV, they want to continue to be connected. They see a value that the Governor's Office on Service and Volunteerism can provide them, as well as their programs. So through these 3 experiences, in the spring, we bring them all together and we're like, hey, here's some AmeriCorps alum, some other service alumni. We have a commissioner on our commission who was in military service, so he speaks to that, and he's now, in corporate social responsibility. So these are all opportunities that you all can do. So stay connected, let's network. And then just last week, we had a finale and a celebration, and we said, stay connected. And we used resources like LinkedIn and our buddies, Service Year Alliance, to welcome them to the big hug of alumni. So I really think that state service commissions can help foster the relationship of the cohort as they go through the service year and support the programs and provide a platform for this inclusive all the programs across across Maryland to be involved. And we also are reaching out to our national directs and inviting them to some of our programs. And honestly, we are building the plane while we're flying it. So we just got started on this work. But I really do feel like we're making progress. And then finally, I'll just say, I think something that's important, and it's kind of what Christy and Jarelli had mentioned, is, I feel like we have an obligation to keep these AmeriCorps, these service members in our hug when we're putting out job opportunities, when we have free trainings. Like, these are the people that should be on our listserv, that we should keep engaged and keep the conversation of creating chapters and just holding space for this connection. The commissions have a big lift. We have a lot of things we do. But I really think that going back to the Nike, like, these are the people that are going to sell these service opportunities a lot easier than somebody who is still calling it AmeriCorps. So I end on that.
Yeah, that's great. I love how you're so thoughtful about creating a cohort experience. And I think that's something that, like, commissions as well as impact communities can have a really powerful role in, is creating this community and then trying to keep that cohesive community together in the alumni experience. I will say we have about 10 minutes left, so please, if anyone listening has any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A. But I wanted to, back to the community thing, I wanted to note that it's something I heard a staff member at Lead for America say, is that they really are thoughtful about how they create a kind of a microcosm of what they want their members to go out into the world and be and act like, and create that sort of community within their cohort, and really model it well to create this sort of like intercultural competence, as well as this sort of like civic engagement. And I think you guys also, some of the ways you guys are approaching this has a very powerful, does that in a very powerful way as well.
I wanted to add real quick that, I had a conversation with somebody about alumni engagement at a university, and he had mentioned Seth Godin has a really great example of, or a thought process of how to keep a cohort engaged. And it's that thought of people like us do this. So people who serve in national service, we do this. And that really creates momentum because we're civically engaged. We're volunteers. We're the first ones to raise our hands and say, I'll keep the spreadsheet. And you can carry that momentum and people feel connected. And we're sitting here staring at each other on Zooms, and there's nothing more than we want than that connection.
Yeah, that's so true. And so to kind of keep the through line of the day, for everyone who was able to join some of the main stage events, I think we at Service Year Alliance, there's a lot of the UNS principles that alums can kind of tap into. I think they have some role and opportunity for all in making sure that people who from traditionally underserved communities can know about service year positions and some of the benefits that can come with that. They also have a role in creating pathways, because they're the ones we want to be able to put on pathways, and the networks that alums create are really another way to create additional pathways for people, because they can connect with active core members and with other alums. I think, though, we really tend to think about alumni work in this civic renewal bucket, and feeling civic renewal, which is, I think, one that a lot of people don't think about focusing on. But I think that all the things we just said, creating civic engagement and leadership development, and creating these intentional communities and this cohort experience is really powerful. So I want to open it up to the floor. Does anyone have any other thoughts about how alumni engagement has really fueled some of this civic renewal or leadership development or civic engagement in their communities? I know we've touched upon it a little bit, but I welcome any other thoughts about how that's working out in your communities.
Can jump in for this one. I can talk a little bit about how we see the chapter as an opportunity to develop leaders among our alumni. So we've developed a structure where we have 3 chapter leadership positions. So we have 2 co-chairs and a secretary. But then they're being developed as leaders because we have 14 board members. So as board members, they also serve as committee leaders, depending on whether we're working on a pro dev event or a social event, or supporting recruitment for some of our programs. And I think that it's really, especially for service year members who are just getting out of their programs, and we want to make sure we're bringing them directly into the chapter work. A lot of them are ready to step into a leadership position after their year of service. So we offer the chapter as an opportunity for them to do that. And then it just supports them in whatever next steps they decide to choose, whether it's grad school, law school, or, searching for a job. It helps because they are now convening alumni in our network, planning events, getting speakers, building connections, building this network. So we really do see this chapter as a great leadership opportunities for our service year members and our alumni. And it's really neat to see them grow into those positions, especially if you know them when they're, in their programs and getting out of it. So I think it's a great way to just keep them connected in the AmeriCorps family for as long as we need them to be. And they just grow into great civic leaders and advocates. Yeah, that's how I think we see our chapter serve as a leadership development opportunity for them.
Nikki or Christy, any other thoughts you want to add?
I kind of take the role of employment pipeline. I'm really excited. We were on our jam call, wishing everybody a great service year and bye-bye. And I said, oh, by the way, our office is hiring, and I got resumes sent to me right away. And, I think like I said, just an obligation to continue to carry service members into that next opportunity is just naturally helps them be more civically engaged.
I think I would probably echo some of what Jiroli and Nikki both just shared. I think, yes, we see the chapter as being a great leadership opportunity, especially for more recent alums or new alums. And that's where we have found that we've had the most engagement, or from those who are maybe just finishing their service year or just recently, and still want to feel connected to this community and to the work. And then, yeah, and as with regards to employment, we also, want to do what we can to support our local alumni and securing employment, especially, ideally in public service or in the nonprofit sector. So that's another reason why we host our annual career fair for alums and members.